The Little Book of Eternal Wisdom, Part 5. Chapter 20. On the Lamentable Separation of the Grave. The Servant. Now, tender lady, put an end to thy sorrow and thy sad recital, and tell me how thou didst separate from thy beloved. Answer. It was a misery to see and hear. Alas, all was yet supportable, while I had my child with me. But when they tore my dead child from my blighted heart, from my embracing arms, from my face pressed to his, and buried him, what a wailing I set up in that hour would hardly be believed. And then, when it came to the separation, oh, what an agony, what woe were seen in me! For when they separated me from my beloved, the separating wrestled with my heart like bitter death. Supported by their hands, who led me away, I walked with tottering steps, for I was robbed of all consolation. My heart woed longfully to return to my love. My confidence was wholly set in him. I rendered him alone, of all mankind entire, fidelity and true attachment, even to the grave. The Servant. O affectionate and tender lady, for this do all hearts greet thee, all tongues praise thee, since all the good that the fatherly heart has vouchsafed to give us flowed through thy hands. Thou art the beginning, thou art the means, thou shalt also be the end. Also, pure and tender Mother, let me remind thee today of thy miserable separation. Think of thy bitter separating from thy tender child, and help me that I may not be separated either from thee or from his joyous countenance. Yes, pure Mother, even as my soul now stands by thee with compassionate sympathy, and embraces thee with ardent desire, and, in contemplation with heartfelt desire, with thanksgiving and praise, leads thee from the sepulchre through the gate of Jerusalem back again to thy house, so do I crave that, at my last departure, my soul may be again led by thee, O pure and tender Mother, to its fatherland, and there be confirmed in everlasting bliss. Amen. The second part. Chapter 21. How we should learn to die, and of the nature of an unprovided death. The Servant. Eternal wisdom. If any one were to give me the whole earth for my own, it would not be so agreeable to me as the truth and the advantage which I have found in thy sweet doctrines. Therefore, do I desire from the very bottom of my heart that thou, the eternal wisdom, wouldst teach me still more? Lord, what is that which belongs, above all things, to a servant of eternal wisdom, who is desirous to live for thee alone? Lord, I should like to hear about the union of pure reason with the Holy Trinity, when, in the true reflection of the eternal birth of the Word, and in the regeneration of her own spirit, reason is ravished from herself and stands face to face with God. Eternal wisdom. Let not him ask about what is highest in doctrine, who still stands on what is lowest in a good life. I will teach thee what will profit thee more. The Servant. Lord, what will thou teach me? The Eternal Wisdom. I will teach thee to die, and will teach thee to live. I will teach thee to receive me lovingly, and I will teach thee to praise me lovingly. Behold, this is what properly belongs to thee. The Servant. Eternal Wisdom. If I had not the power to fulfill my wishes, I know not whether, in this temporal state, I ought to wish anything else. As to doctrine, then how to die to myself and all the world, how to live wholly for thee, to cherish thy love with all my heart, to receive thee lovingly, and to praise thee lovingly. O God, how blessed is that man who is able to do this, and who consumes in it his whole life. But, Lord, dost thou mean a spiritual dying or a bodily dying? Eternal Wisdom. I mean both, one and the other. The Servant. What need have I, Lord, of being taught how to die bodily? Surely it teaches itself when it comes. Eternal Wisdom. He who puts his teaching off till then will find it too late. The Servant. O Lord, it is still somewhat bitter for me to hear about death. Eternal Wisdom. Behold, even this is the source of those unprovided and terrible deaths whereof the towns and convents now are full. Behold, death has often bridled thee secretly, and had fain ridden thee from hence, in the same way as he does the countless multitude, one of whom I will now show thee. Open, therefore, thy interior sense, and see and listen. See what grim death is like in the person of thy neighbor, but do mark the lamentable voice thou wilt hear. The servant heard with his understanding the voice of the unprepared dying man cry aloud, and speak as follows. The sorrows of death have surrounded me. Woe is me, thou God of heaven, that I ever was born into this world. The beginning of my life was with crying and weeping, and now my departure from it, it is also with bitter crying and weeping. Alas, the sorrows of death have surrounded me. The pains of hell have encompassed me. O death, O furious death, what an unwelcome guest art thou to my young and joyous heart! How little was I prepared for thy coming! Thou hast attacked me from behind. Thou hast run me down. Thou leadest me away in thy chains like one that leads a condemned man bound and fettered to the place where he is to be slain. I clasp my hands above my head. I wring them with anguish in each other, for gladly would I escape from him. I look around me into all the ends of the earth to see if anyone will give me advice or help, and it cannot be. Death, I hear, thus fatally speaking within me. Neither learning, nor money, nor friends can avail thee. Thou art mine by right. Alas, and must it be so? O God, and must I then depart from hence? Is a last separation really at hand? Woe is me that ever I was born. O death, what art thou going to do with me? The Servant. Dear man, why dost thou take it so hard? This is the common lot of rich and poor, young and old. Many more have died in their youth than in their old age. Or wouldst thou, perhaps, alone escape death? This would prove a great want of understanding in thee. The unprepared dying man. O Lord, what bitter consolation is this! I am not without understanding. Those are without understanding who have not lived for him, and who are not frightened at death. Such persons are blind. They die like cattle. They know not what they have before them. I do not complain that I must die. I complain that I must die unprepared. I do not merely lament the end of my life. I lament and weep over the delightful days which are so utterly lost and vanished without any profit. For truly I am like an untimely and rejected abortion, like a blossom torn off in May. My days have sped swifter than an arrow from the bow. I am forgotten as though I had never been, like a track which a bird makes through the air, which closes behind it, and is unknown to all men. Therefore are my words so full of bitterness, therefore is my speech so full of woe. Oh, who will enable me to be as I once was, to have again those pleasant times before me, and to know then what I know now? When those times were mine, I did not rightly estimate them. I, foolish man, let them pass swiftly away. Now are they vanished from me. I cannot recall them, I cannot overtake them. No hour is so short but I ought to have valued it more preciously and thankfully than a poor man about to receive a kingdom as a gift. Lo, this is why my eyes shed salt tears, because they cannot restore what I have lost. Woe is me, O God, that I should have feasted so many days away, and that it profits me now so little. Why did not I learn to die all the time? O ye blooming roses, that have still your days before you, look at me and learn wisdom. Turn your youth to God, and with him alone occupy your time, so that what has happened to me may not happen to you. Ah me! How have I consumed my youth? No one would I believe. My wayward spirit would listen to no one. Alas! Now I am fallen into the snare of bitter death. My days have vanished, my youth has sped. Better were it for me had my mother's womb become my grave than I should have squandered away my time. The servant. Be converted to God. Repent of thy sins. If thy end be well, then will all be well. Unprepared dying man. Alas, what do I hear? How shall I now do penance? How shall I now be converted to God? Seest thou not how terrified I am, how exceeding great is my distress? Even as a little bird caught in the claws of a cruel falcon, and become senseless in the agony of dying, I am unconscious of everything except that I would gladly escape, and cannot. Death and the bitterness of separation oppress me. Alas, the repentance and free conversion of him who is capable of right doing, what a sure thing you are! He who puts you off will hardly fail of being himself put off. O long protraction of my amendment! How much too protracted hast thou not proved? My good intentions without works, my good promises without performance, have ruined me. I have said to God, tomorrow and tomorrow, till I am fallen into the night of death. O thou Almighty God, is it not a misery above all miseries? Ought it not deeply to afflict me, that I should thus have lost the whole of my life, my 30, my 40 years? I know not that I ever spent a day wholly according to God's will, or that I ever rendered to God, as in reason I ought to have done, a truly acceptable service. Oh, how the thought cuts me to the heart! O God, how wretchedly shall I not stand before Thee and the whole heavenly host! Lo, now I am departing hence, and now, even at this hour, a single pater noster, uttered with devotion, would rejoice me more than if any one were to put into my hands 1,000 pounds of gold. Ah, my God, what have I not eternally neglected? What evil have I not inflicted on myself in not having seen this while it was in my power? What hours upon hours have escaped me? How have I allowed myself to be led wrong by small things in the great affair of my salvation? It would now be more agreeable to me, and would procure me more eternal reward, if, from divine love, I had foregone the pleasure I took at the sight of a friend, when such pleasure was contrary to God's will, than if that friend were to demand a reward for me from God 30 years long on his knees. Hear, hear, all men, a lamentable thing. I go begging round and round, because my time is short, and beg a small alms out of the merits of good people, as an expiation for myself, and it is refused me. For they are all afraid lest they should want oil in their lamps. Alas, thou God of heaven, let this move thy compassion, that with my healthy body I could have earned such great reward and wealth on so many a day when I went about idle, and that now this small alms, begged only as an expiation, not as a reward, for which, moreover, I should stand indebted, no one will give me. Oh, let this, ye old and young, go to your hearts, and hoard up in the good season while ye can, so that ye may not become beggars, and be denied in an hour like this. The servant. Alas, my dear friend, thy distress rends my very heart. By the living God I conjure thee, give me some advice so that I may not come into trouble. The unprepared dying man. The best advice I can give thee, the greatest wisdom and prudence on earth, is this, that thou prepare thyself by a full confession of and an abstinence from all those things with which thou knowest thyself to be infected, and that thou should hold thyself at all times ready, as though thou shouldst have to depart hence in a day, or at latest in a week. Imagine now in thy heart that thy soul is in purgatory, and doomed to remain there 10 years for her evil deeds, and that this year alone is granted thee to help her in. Look at her very often. See how woefully she calls out to thee and speaks to thee. O thou, my best beloved friend, reach me thy hand, have pity on me, and help me to pray that I may speedily come out of this raging fire of purgatory, for I am so miserable that there is nobody, except thee alone, to help me with charitable works. I am forgotten by all the world, because everyone is busy about himself. The servant. This were a choice doctrine for whoever might actually feel it like thee in their hearts. But though thy words are so piercing, yet do most people sit here and give little heed to them. They have ears and hear not. They have eyes and see not. No one will really die before his soul departs out of him. The unprepared dying man. Wherefore, when at last they are caught on the hook of death, and cry aloud in woeful distress and cruel pain, they are not heard. Lo, even as among 100 persons who wear the appearance of holiness, of others I will say nothing, not one pays attention to my words, that he may be converted and reformed his life. So is it come to pass that among 100, not one but falls into the snare of death unprepared, as also certainly happens to those who die suddenly, or in an unconscious state. For the comforts of the body, perishable love, and greedy pursuits of sustenance blind the multitude. But if thou wouldst be delivered from this miserable and unprovided death, then follow my advice. Behold, diligent meditation on death, and faithful assistance given to thy poor, who appeal so piteously to thee, will advance thee so far that thou wilt not only be without fear, but more, thou wilt expect death with all the ardor of thy heart. Think of me every day, and write down my words in the bottom of thy heart. In my bitter distress see what thy future lot will be. Look what a night this is. Oh, happy the man that ever he was born, who arrives well prepared at this hour, for his passage will be a good one, however bitter his death. Behold, the bright angels will guard him, the saints will escort him, the celestial court receive him. His final marching forth will be a glorious entry into his everlasting fatherland. But me, alas, where will my soul lodge this very night in that strange mysterious country? O my soul, how art thou utterly forsaken! O God, how miserable she will be among all miserable souls! Who is there that will help her with entire fidelity? And now let me put an end to my sad complaints, for my hour is come. I see now that it cannot be otherwise. My hands begin to grow cold, my face to turn livid, my eyes to lose their sight. Alas, the shocks of furious death wrestle with my poor heart. I begin to fetch my breath very hard. The light of this world begins to vanish from me. I begin to see into the next world. O God, my God, what a sight! The horrible forms of black Moors assemble together. The wild beasts of hell surround me. They gloat over my poor soul to see if it will be theirs. O thou just judge of the severe judgment seat, how very heavy in thy scales are those things which in ours are so light. The cold sweat of death bursts from very anxiety through my flesh. Oh, the wrathful aspect of the severe judge, how very sharp thy judgments are! Now let me turn in spirit to that world where I am led by the hand into purgatory, and where, in the land of torments, I see anguish and distress. O God, I see the wild hot flames dart up on high, and meet over the heads of suffering souls. They wander up and down amid the dark flames, and great is their affliction. What heart would like to contemplate our pangs, the bitterness of our woe? Many a sad cry is heard. Help! Help! Ah! Where is all the help of our false friends? Where are the fair promises of our false friends? How they have deserted us! How they have utterly forgotten us! Oh, have pity on us, some little pity. At least you, our best beloved friends. What services have we not rendered to you, and how are we now repaid? Oh, that we should not have warded off these sufferings when we could have done so with things so trifling! Is not the least torment here greater, much greater, indeed, than any torment ever was on earth? 1 hour in purgatory lasts 100 years. Lo, now we boil, now we burn, now we shriek aloud for help. But, more than all it is, our misfortune, to be deprived so long of the joy of his countenance. This it is that cuts through the heart, the senses, the soul, and thus I expire. The servant. O eternal wisdom, how hast thou forsaken me? O God, how has death all at once become present before me? Alas, thou soul of mine, art thou still in my body? Lord of heaven, do I still live? Ah, Lord, now I will praise thee and vow reformation to thee until death. Oh, how very terrified I am! I did not think death was so near me. Truly, Lord, this sight shall not fail to profit me. Every day I will be on the watch for death, and will look about me that he take me not by surprise. I will learn how to die. I will turn my thoughts to yonder world. Lord, I see that there is no remaining here. Lord, in sooth, I will not save up my sorrow and repentance till death. Oh, how terrified I am at this spectacle! I marvel that my soul is still in my body. Begone, begone from me, soft reclining, long sleeping, good eating and drinking, perishable honors, delicateness and luxury. But if a little suffering here is so painful to me, how shall I ever endure immeasurable suffering? O God, if indeed I were now to die thus, how would it be with me? What a load have I not still upon me? Lord, this very day I will set a poor man to pray for my poor soul. And since all her friends have forsaken her, I will befriend her. Eternal wisdom. See, this shouldst thou diligently look to while thou art in thy youth, and while thou hast still time to make things better. But when, in truth, thou hast reached this hour, and thou canst not make things better, then shouldst thou look at nothing on earth, except my death and my infinite mercy, so that thy trust may repose wholly in me. The servant. O Lord, I prostrate myself at thy feet, and I beseech thee with bitter tears to chastise me here as thou wilt. Only keep it not in store for me in the next world. Woe is me, Lord, the fire of purgatory and its unspeakable torments. How could I ever be so foolish as to think lightly of them? And how do I now stand in such great fear of them? Eternal wisdom. Be of good heart. This thy fear is the beginning of wisdom, and a path to salvation. Or hast thou forgotten how all the Scriptures declare what great salvation is contained in the fear and diligent contemplation of death? Thou shouldst always praise God, for not to one in 1,000 has it been granted to know him, as to thee. Listen to a lamentable thing. They hear it spoken of, yet they know of it beforehand, and yet they allow it to pass by, and heed it not till they be swallowed up by it, and then they howl and weep when it is too late. Open thy eyes, count upon thy fingers, see how many of them have died around thee in thy own times. Talk with them a little in thy heart. Join thy old man to them as though it were dead. Question them together. See with what fathomless sighs, with what bitter tears they will say, "Oh, blessed is he who ever was born, who follows sweet counsel and, in the misfortunes of others, learns wisdom. Prepare thyself well for thy departure hence, for truly thou sittest as a bird on the bow, and art as a man who stands on the water's edge, and looks at the swift sailing ship in which he will presently take his seat, and sail away for a strange land whence he will never more return. Therefore, so regulate thy life that when the ship comes for thee thou mayest be ready, and mayest joyfully take thy departure hence." Chapter 22. How one should live an interior and godly life. The Servant. Lord, many are the rules, many the ways of a godly life. The one is so, the other so. Many and various are the ways. Lord, the Scriptures are inexhaustible, their precepts innumerable. Teach me, O eternal wisdom, in a few words, out of the abyss of all the things they contain, to what I ought chiefly to hold fast in the way of a truly pious life. Eternal wisdom. The truest, most useful, and most practical doctrine for thee in all the Scriptures that, in a few words, will more than amply convince thee of all the truth requisite for the attainment of the summit of perfection in a godly life, is this doctrine. Keep thyself secluded from all mankind. Keep thyself free from the influence of all external things. Disenthrall thyself from all that depends on chance or accident, and direct thy mind at all times on high in secret and divine contemplation, wherein, with a steady gaze from which thou never swervest, thou hast me before thy eyes. And as to other exercises, such as poverty, fasting, watching, and every other castigation, send them all to this as their end, and use just so much and so many of them as may advance thee to it. Behold, thus wilt thou attain to the loftiest pitch of perfection, that not one person in 1,000 comprehends, because, with their end in view, they all continue in other exercises or go astray in the long years. The Servant. Lord, who can exist in the unswerving gaze of thy divine wisdom at all times? Eternal wisdom. No one who lives here below in this temporal scene. This has been said to thee only that thou mightest know at what thou shouldst aim, after what thou shouldst strive, to what thou shouldst turn thy heart and mind. And if ever thou losest sight of it, let it be to thee as if thy eternal salvation were taken away from thee, and do thou speedily turn to it again, so that thou mayest again obtain possession of it, and then must thou look carefully to thyself. For, if it escape from thee, thou art like a sailor from whose grasp the oars in a strong swell have slipped, and who do not know whither he shall direct his course. But if thou mayest not yet have a constant abiding place in divine contemplation, let the perpetually repeated collecting of thy wandering thoughts, and the assiduous withdrawing of thyself to engage in it, procure thee constancy as far as it is possible. Listen, listen, my child, to the faithful instructions of thy faithful Father. O give heed to them, Shut them up in the bottom of thy heart. Think who it is that teaches thee all this, and how very much in earnest he is. Dost thou wish to become ever more and more faithful? Then set my precepts before thy eyes. Wherever thou sittest, standest, or walkest, think that I am present to thee, and that I either admonish or converse with thee. O my child, keep within thyself. Keep thyself pure, disengaged, and retired. See, in this way wilt thou become conscious of my words. That good, too, will be made known to thee, which, as yet, is greatly hidden from thee. The Servant. O eternal wisdom, praised be thou forever. Ah, my Lord and most faithful friend, if I would not do it otherwise, thou wouldst yet force me to do it with thy sweet words and thy gentle teaching. Lord, I ought and will do my very best towards it. Chapter 23. How we ought lovingly to receive God. The Servant. Eternal wisdom, if my soul could only penetrate the heavenly shrine of thy divine mysteries, I would question thee further about love, and this would be my question. Lord, thou hast so entirely poured out of the abyss of thy divine love in thy passion, that I wonder if thou canst show any more signs of thy love. Eternal wisdom. Yes. Even as the stars of heaven are countless, so the love tokens of my unfathomable love are uncounted. The Servant. Ah, sweet love of mine! Ah, tender Lord elect! How my soul languishes for thy love! Turn thy mild countenance towards me, outcast creature that I am. See how everything vanishes and passes away in me, except only the one treasure of thy ardent love, and therefore tell me something further of this rich and hidden treasure. Lord, thou knowest well that it is love's right never to be satisfied with what concerns the beloved, that the more it has, the more it desires, how unworthy soever it may acknowledge itself to be, for such is the effect of the omnipotent power of love. O beautiful wisdom, now tell me the greatest and dearest mark of thy love, that in thy adopted human nature thou didst ever manifest, without taking into account the unfathomable love token of thy bitter death. Eternal wisdom. Answer me now a question. What is that of all lovely things which is most agreeable to a loving heart? The Servant. Lord, to my understanding nothing is so agreeable to a loving heart as the beloved himself and his sweet presence. Eternal wisdom. Even so. See, and on this account, that nothing which belongs to true love might be wanting to those who love me, did my unfathomable love, as soon as I had resolved to depart by death out of this world to my Father, compel me to give myself in my loving presence at the table of the Last Supper to my dear disciples, and in all future times to my elect, because I know beforehand the misery which many a languishing heart would suffer for my sake. The Servant. O dearest Lord, and art thou thyself, thy very self, really here? Eternal wisdom. Thou hast me in the sacrament, before thee and with thee, as truly and really God and man, according to soul and body, with flesh and blood, as truly as my pure mother carried me in her arms, and as truly as I am in heaven in my perfect glory. The servant. Ah, gentle wisdom, there is yet something in my heart. May I be allowed to utter it to thee? Lord, it does not proceed from unbelief. I believe that what thou willst thou canst do. But, tender Lord, it is a marvel to me, if I may venture to say so, how the beautiful, the delightful and glorified body of my Lord, in all its greatness, in all its divinity, can thus essentially conceal itself under the little shape of the bread, which, relatively considered, is so out of all relation. Gentle Lord, be not angry with me on this account, for, as thou art my wisdom elect, should I be glad by thy favor to hear something on this head out of my sweet mouth? Eternal wisdom. In what matter my glorified body and my soul, according to the whole truth, are in the sacrament, this can no tongue express, nor any mind conceive, for it is a work of my omnipotence. Therefore art thou to believe it in all simplicity, and not pry much into it. And yet I must say a little to thee about it. I will thrust this wonder aside for thee with another wonder. Tell me how it can be in nature that a great house should shape itself in a small mirror, or in every fragment of a mirror when the mirror is broken. Or how can this be, that the vast heavens should compress themselves into so small a space as thy small eye, the two being so very unequal to each other in greatness? The servant. Truly, Lord, I cannot tell. It is a strange thing, for my eye is to the heavens but as a small point. Eternal wisdom. Behold, though neither thy eye nor anything else in nature is equal to the heavens, and yet nature can do this thing, why should not I, the Lord of nature, be able to do many more things above nature? But now, tell me further, is it not just a great miracle to create heaven and earth, and all creatures out of nothing, as to change bread invisibly into my body? The servant. Lord, it is just as possible for thee, as far as I can understand, to change something into something, as to create something out of nothing. Eternal wisdom. Dost thou wonder then at that, and not at this? Tell me further. Thou believest that I fed 5,000 persons with 5 loaves. Where was the hidden matter which obeyed my words? The servant. Lord, I know not. Eternal wisdom. Or dost thou believe thou hast a soul? The servant. This I do not believe, because I know it, for otherwise I should not be alive. Eternal wisdom. And yet thou canst not see thy soul with thy bodily eyes. The servant. Lord, I know that there are many more beings invisible to human eyes than such as we can see. Eternal wisdom. Now listen. Many a person there is of senses so gross as hardly to believe that anything which he cannot perceive with his senses really exists, concerning which the learned know that it is false. In like manner does the human understanding stand related to divine knowledge. Had I asked thee how the portals of the abyss are constructed, or how the waters in the firmament are held together, thou wouldst perhaps have answered thus: It is a question too deep for me. I cannot go into it. I never descended into the abyss, nor ever mounted up to the firmament. Well, I have only to ask thee about earthly things which thou seest and hearest, and understandest not. Why shouldst thou wish, then, to understand what surpasses all the earth, all the heavens, and all the senses? Or why wilt thou needs inquire into it? Behold, all such wondering and prying thoughts proceed alone from grossness of sense, which takes divine and supernatural things after the likeness of things earthly and natural, and such is not the case. If a woman were to give birth to a child in a dark tower, and it were to be brought up there, and its mother were to tell it of the sun and the stars, the child would marvel greatly, and would think it against all reason, and incredible, which its mother, nevertheless, knows so well to be true. The servant. Indeed, Lord, I have nothing more to say, for thou hast so enlightened my faith that I ought never to think of the marveling in my heart again. Or why should I seek to inquire into the highest? Who cannot comprehend the lowest? Thou art the truth which cannot lie. Thou art the highest wisdom that can do all things. Thou art the omnipotent who can dispose of all things. O noble and loving Lord, I have often desired in my heart that, like holy Simeon in the temple, I might have received thee bodily in my arms, might have pressed thee to my heart and soul, so that the spiritual kiss of thy presence might have been as truly mine as it was his. But now, Lord, I see that I receive thee as truly as he, and so much the more nobly as thy tender body is now glorified and impassible, which then it was passible. Wherefore, dearest Lord, if my heart had the love of all hearts, my conscience the purity of all the angels, and my soul the beauty of all souls, so that by thy grace I should be worthy of thee, I would fain receive thee today so affectionately, and so bury and sink thee in the bottom of my heart and soul, that neither joy nor sorrow, neither in life nor death, could separate thee from me. Ah, sweet Lord, hadst thou, my chosen love, only sent me thy messenger, I should not have known, for all this world, how I ought to offer him a sufficient welcome. How then ought I to behave myself towards him whom my soul loveth? Truly art thou the only one thing in which everything is included, that, in time and eternity, my heart can desire. Or is there anything else that my soul can desire with thee that thou art not? I will say nothing of that which is contrary to thee, or which is without thee, for that would be repugnant to me. Truly art thou the comeliness of all to the eyes, the sweetest of all to the mouth, the tenderest of all to the touch, the most beloved of all to the heart. Lord, my soul neither sees nor hears, nor feels aught of all that is here below, but she finds it severely 1,000 times lovelier in thee, my chosen one. Ah, eternal Lord, how am I to restrain myself in thy regard from wonder and delight? Thy presence inflames me, but thy greatness terrifies me. My reason will needs do honor to its Lord, but my heart desires to love its only good, and lovingly to embrace. Thou art my Lord and my God, but thou art also my brother, and, if I may venture to say so, my beloved spouse. Oh, what love, what rapture, and what great joy, what dignity do I not possess in thee alone? Ah, sweet Lord, methinks that I had only been vouchsafed the grace to receive out of thy open wounds, from thy heart, one single drop of blood into my mouth. If I could have had my desire, it would have been given me the fullness of joy. Ah, heartfelt, inconceivable wonder! Now I have not only received from thy heart or thy hands, from thy feet or thy tender wounds, I have not only received 1 or 2 drops, but I have received all thy hot, rose-colored blood through my mouth into my heart and in my soul. Is not this a great thing? Ought I not to appreciate this, which to the exalted angels is precious? Lord, would that all my limbs, and all that I am, were transformed into an unfathomable love for the sake of this sign of thy love. Lord, what is there else in this world that could rejoice my heart, or that it could desire, when thou givest thyself thus cordially for me to enjoy and love? Truly it is called a sacrament of love. When was there anything lovelier seen or heard of than to embrace love itself, than to be charged by grace into love itself? Lord, I see no difference except that Simeon received thee visibly, and I receive thee invisibly. But as little as my bodily eyes can see thy true humanity, just as little could his bodily eyes contemplate thy divinity, except through faith, as I do now. Lord, what new power is lodged in this bodily sight? He whose spiritual eyes are opened has not much to see with his bodily eyes, for the eyes of the Spirit see far more really and truly. Lord, I know by faith, as far as one can know it, that I have thee here. What do I wish for more? Lord, it is 1,000 times better for me that I am unable to see thee. How could I ever have the heart thus visibly to partake of thee? As it is, that which is lovely and delightful remains, while that which is inhuman falls away. Lord, when I truly reflect how inscrutably well, how lovingly and wisely thou hast regulated all things in my heart, with a loud voice exclaims, Oh, the great treasure of the abyss of divine wisdom, what thou must not be in thyself, for thou art so much in thy fair emanations. Now, O glorious Lord, look at the great and sincere desire of my heart. Lord, never was king or emperor so worthily received, never dear strange guest so cordially embraced, never bride so beautifully and tenderly taken home, nor so honorably maintained, as my soul desires to receive thee, my most honored emperor, my soul's most lovely bridegroom, this day, and to introduce thee to the innermost and the very best that my heart and soul are able to afford, and to offer it thee as worthily as ever it was offered thee by my creature. Wherefore, Lord, teach me how I should behave myself towards thee, how, with due honor and love, I should receive thee. Eternal wisdom, thou shouldst receive me worthily, thou shouldst partake of me with humility, thou shouldst keep me earnestly, thou shouldst embrace me with conjugal love, and have me in thy godly dignity before thy eyes. Spiritual hunger and actual devotion must impel thee to me more than custom. The soul that wishes to feel me interiorly in the recesses of a secluded life, and sweetly to enjoy me, must, first of all, be cleansed from sin, must be adorned with virtue, encircled with self-denial, decked out with the red roses of ardent love, strewn over with the fair violets of humble submission, and the white lilies of perfect purity. She should pray to me with peace of heart, for in peace is my dwelling place. She should clasp me in her arms to the exclusion of all strange affections, for these I avoid, and flee as the free bird avoids and flees the cage. She should sing me the song of Zion, which is a song of fervent, loving, and measureless praise. Then will I embrace her, and she shall incline herself on my breast. There, if she finds a calm repose, a pure vision, unusual fruition, a foretaste of eternal bliss, let her presence preserve it. Let her keep it for herself, and, with a sighing heart, let her speak as follows. Truly art thou the hidden God, the secret good which no one can know that has not felt it. The servant. Alas, the great blindness in which I have hitherto lived! I have plucked the red roses, and have not smelt them. I have wandered among the blooming flowers, and have not seen them. I have been as a dry branch amid the fresh dews of May. Never, oh never can I sufficiently repent thy having been for so many a day so near me, and my having been so far from thee. O thou, sweet guest of pure souls, what a sorry welcome have I hitherto given thee! What an ill return have I so frequently made thee! How little desirous have I not shown myself for the sweet bread of angels! I had the precious balsam in my mouth, and felt it not. Ah, thou delight of all angelic eyes, never as yet did I feel true delight in thee. If it were announced to me that a bodily friend would visit me in the morning, should I not rejoice at it all the night before? And yet, never did I prepare myself for the reception of thee, as in reason I ought. Thou worthy guest, whom heaven and earth equally honor. Alas, how have I been wont to turn quickly away from thee, how to drive thee out of thy own! O eternal God, thou, even if thou thyself art here so truly present, and the angelic host is here, and yet I have approached so shyly and sluggishly. Of thee I will say something, but, truly, Lord, I know of no spot within many miles, whither, if I had known for certain of the presence of blessed angels, those high and noble guests who at all times behold thee, I should not have repaired of my own accord, and even if I had not seen them, still my heart, on their account, would have leapt in my body for joy. O sweet Lord and God, that thou thyself, the Lord of all angels, shouldst have been present here, and shouldst have had with thee so many angelic choirs, and that I should not have given more heed to the place. This must ever be a sore affliction for me. I ought, at all events, to have approached the place where I knew things to be thus present, even though nothing else might have come of it. O God, how often have I stood distracted and without devotion on the very spot where thou wast before me, and with me in the blessed sacrament. My body indeed stood there, but my heart was elsewhere. How often have I thought so little of thee in thy presence, that my heart was not even offered thee an affectionate salutation, with a devout inclination. Gentle Lord, my eyes ought to have looked at thee with joyous delight. My heart ought to have loved thee with the fullness of desire. My mouth ought to have praised thee with heartfelt, fervent jubilee. All my strength ought to have melted in thy glad service. What did not thy servant David do, who leapt so joyously with all his might before the ark, in which there was nothing but corporal bread of heaven, nothing but corporal things? Lord, now do I stand here before thee, and before all thy angels, and with bitter tears fall at thy feet. Remember, remember, tender Lord, that here, before me, thou art my flesh and my brother, and forego thy displeasure. Oh, forgive me all the dishonor that I ever offered thee, for I am sorry for it, and must ever be sorry for it. For the light of thy wisdom begins only now to enlighten me, and the place where thou art, not only according to thy divinity, but according to thy humanity, shall be honored by me evermore. Ah, thou sweetest good, thou worthy Lord and lovely guest of my soul, another question would I gladly ask. Tell me, gentle Lord, what is it thou givest thy beloved with thy real presence in the sacrament, provided she receives thee with love and desire? Eternal wisdom. Is that a fitting question for a lover? What have I better than myself? He who possesses the object of his love, what else has he to ask for? He who gives himself, what is he refused? I give myself to thee, and take thee from myself, and unite thee to me. Thou losest thyself, and art wholly transformed into me. What does the sun in his brightest reflection bestow on the unclouded sky? Yes, what does the bright star of the morning dawn bestow on the dark night? Or what do the fair and ravishing adornments of summer bestow after the cold, wintry, melancholy season? The servant. O Lord, they bestow precious gifts. Eternal wisdom. They seem precious to thee because they are visible to thee. Behold, the smallest gift that flows from me in the blessed sacraments reflects more splendor in eternity than any sunny brightness. It sheds more light than any morning star. It adorns thee more ravishingly in eternal beauty than ever did any adornment of summer the earth. Or is not my bright divinity more radiant than any sun, my noble soul more resplendent than any star, my glorified body more ravishing than any ravishment of summer? And yet all these things hast thou truly received here. The servant. O Lord, why then are they not more sensibly felt? Lord, I often approach in such dryness that all light, all grace and sweetness are strange to me. Methinks, as to a man born blind who never saw the sun. Lord, if I may venture to say so, I could indeed wish that, in thy real presence, thou hadst given me more testimony of thyself. Eternal wisdom. The less the testimony, the purer thy faith and the greater thy reward. The Lord of nature operates with such secrecy a blessed increase in many a fair tree, that no eye nor other sense can perceive it till it is accomplished. Now, I am not an exteriorly working good, but an interiorly shining light, an interiorly working good, which is so much the nobler as it is the more spiritual. The servant. Alas, how few men there are who perceive this, who weigh thoroughly what they receive. They not draw near like the rest generally, and in an ill and inconsiderate manner, and therefore, as they go up empty, they come away without grace. They do not ruminate their food as to ponder what they have received. Eternal wisdom. To the well-prepared I am the bread of eternal life. To the little prepared the bread of dryness, but to the unprepared I am a deadly blow, an eternal curse. The servant. O Lord, what a terrible thing is this! Lord, whom dost thou call the well-prepared, the little prepared, and the unprepared? Eternal wisdom. The well-prepared are the purified, the little prepared such as still cleave to temporal things, but the unprepared are sinful who continue by will and by deed in mortal sin. The servant. But, tender Lord, if at the time a person is heartily sorry for his sins, and strives, to the best of his ability, to rid himself wholly of them, conformably to Christian precept, how is it then with him? Eternal wisdom. In such a case a man is, for the time, no longer in sin. The servant. Lord, in my opinion, it were one of the greatest things in this world could accomplish, if any person, while living in this temporal state, was able to prepare himself worthily enough for thy reception. Eternal wisdom. That person was never yet born. Nay, if a man had the native purity of all the angels, the sanctity of all the saints, and the good works of all mankind, he would yet be unworthy. The servant. Ah, beloved Lord, with what trembling hearts ought not persons so unworthy, so deprived of grace, as we are, to approach thee. Eternal wisdom. If a man only does his best, nothing more is required of him, for God completes what is left incomplete. A sick man should cast aside all reserve, and should approach the physician, whose attendance is his cure. The servant. Lord, beloved Lord, which is better, often or seldom, to receive thee in the blessed sacrament? Eternal wisdom. For him whose grace and devotion perceptibly increase by it, to receive me often is profitable. The servant. But, Lord, if a man in his own opinion remains the same, and cannot prove that he either increases or decreases by it in holiness, or if he is often visited by spiritual dryness, how should he then behave himself? Eternal wisdom. A man, provided only he does his part, should not withdraw himself because of spiritual dryness. For the salvation of that soul, which by God's will suffers from spiritual dryness, is often accomplished as nobly in the light of pure faith alone, as in great sweetness. I am a boon which, turned to account, increases, but which, saved up, wastes away. It is better to approach once a week with a deep sense of real humility than once a year with an overweening self-approbation. The servant. Lord, at what time does the influence of grace from the Blessed Sacrament take place? Eternal wisdom. In the very moment of actual reception. The servant. Lord, but what if a man have a fervent desire for thy bodily presence in the sacrament? He must yet be deprived of it? Eternal wisdom. Many a man, after being filled with me, goes away hungry, and many a man obtains me, though the table be empty. The former merely receives me bodily, the latter enjoys me spiritually. The servant. Lord, has that man any advantage who receives thee bodily and spiritually over him who only receives thee spiritually? Eternal wisdom. Tell me whether that man has more who has me and my grace, or he who has my grace alone. The servant. Lord, how long dost thou remain in thy real presence with a man who has received thee? Eternal wisdom. As long as the image and likeness of the sacrament remain.